Throughout this nation's history, there have been a tremendous amount of great leaders who have left great legacies.
Whether they be of the people or of the government, they have all done great things for our nation.
Two of which are brothers, John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy.
Both tragically met their demise at the hands of an assassin.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
On May 29, 1917, in Brookline, Massachusetts, a boy who would someday change the world was born. This boy was John Fitzgerald Kennedy. As a child, John switched a lot of schools, but was never really in the same school for very long. After school, John went into the military from 1941 to 1945. On August 2, 1943, Kennedy's boat, the PT-109, along with the PT-162 and the PT-169, were performing nighttime patrols near New Georgia in the Solomon Islands, when PT-109 was rammed by the Japanese destroyer Aomajiri.
Kennedy gathered his surviving crew members together in the water around the wreckage to vote whether to fight or surrender. Shunning surrender, the men swam towards a small island.
Kennedy, despite re-injury to his back in the collision, towed a badly burned crewman through the water with a life jacket strap clenched between his teeth. He towed the wounded man to the island and later to a second island, from where his crew was subsequently rescued. For these actions, Kennedy received the Navy and Marine Corps Medal. Then, after military service, John went into politics. From 1947 to 1953, John served as the U.S. House of Representatives from Massachusetts' 11th District. Later, from 1953 to 1960, John performed the duty of the United States Senator from Massachusetts. And after that, on January 20th, 1961, John Fitzgerald Kennedy became President of the United States of America.
My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man.
As one of his first presidential acts, Kennedy asked Congress to create the Peace Corps.
His brother-in-law, Sergeant Shriver, was the first director. Through this program, Americans volunteered to help underdeveloped nations in areas such as education, farming, healthcare, and construction. The organization grew to 5,000 members by March 1963 and 10,000 the following year.
Since 1961, over 200,000 Americans have joined the Peace Corps, serving in 139 countries.
The Peace Corps gives us a chance to show a side of our country which is too often submerged. Our desire to live in peace, our desire to be of help.
Kennedy is also credited as the founder of the U.S.-Israeli military alliance, which would be continued under later presidents.
John also was in charge of the Bay of Pigs attack on Cuba, which did not end at all how he would have liked it to. And John, along with his brother Robert, helped deal with the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
After a few years of negotiations and the Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy and the Soviets came to an agreement on banning the testing of nuclear weapons for the safety of not only our nation, but the world. And on July 25, 1963, the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty came into effect, banning all nuclear testing in air, water, land, or space.
Let both sides join in creating a new endeavor, not a new balance of power, but a new world of law, where the strong are just, and the weak secure, and the peace preserved. All this will not be finished in the first 100 days. Nor will it be finished in the first 1,000 days. Nor in the life of this administration. Nor even perhaps in our lifetime on this planet. But let us begin.
On November 22, 1963, in Dallas, Texas, John was assassinated. There are many conspiracies about the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Some say Lee Harvey Oswald did it, while others went in and created various conspiracy theories. The subsequent killing of Oswald by Jack Ruby and the sealing of records regarding the JFK assassination only further whetted the appetites of conspiracy theorists who have argued that the guiding force behind the assassination was everyone from the Soviets to the Cubans, the CIA, Kennedy's successor Lyndon B. Johnson, and the Mafia. On November 20th, 1925, the seventh child of Joseph and Rose Kennedy was born. This boy was Robert Francis Kennedy. Like John, Robert moved schools a lot, and although he was an average student, Robert had to repeat the third grade. Also, during this time, Robert was a sort of outcast among his siblings, and he was a very devout Catholic. Robert was educated at Harvard College, interrupting his studies to serve in World War II as a Navy lieutenant, following the death of his eldest brother, Joseph Patrick Kennedy, Jr., in the war.
He served aboard the destroyer Joseph P. Kennedy until being discharged in 1946.
He next traveled briefly to Palestine as a war correspondent. Marriage to Ethel Skakel followed in 1950, and a law degree from the University of Virginia in 1951. Kennedy and his wife had 11 children over the next 18 years.
He then was appointed as Attorney General by John F. Kennedy, and this choice caused lots of controversy, because some said that he was inexperienced and amateur, but he was far from it. During his time as Attorney General, he fought hard against organized crime, because it was one of the things he despised the most. Also, he was a huge icon in equality of rights for African Americans and Hispanics, and supported the abolition of the death penalty.
On November 22, 1963, when John died, Robert was shocked and changed by the death of his brother. He was greatly affected and grieved over the death a lot, but after a while he accepted it, and 9 months later he became the Senator of New York. During the 4 years as Senator, he helped solve problems like Vietnam, poverty, and human rights.
On April 4, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and killed. That night, Robert Kennedy, who was New York Senator at the time, decided to give a speech to the people of Indianapolis, Indiana. The speech was delivered on the back of a flatbed truck. Although many major cities had riots, Indianapolis remained calm after Robert's speech.
My favorite poem, my favorite poet was Aeschylus. He once wrote, "Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God."
Soon after, Robert traveled to Delano, California to meet with civil rights activist Cesar Chavez, who was on a 25-day hunger strike showing his commitment to nonviolence. It was at his visit in California where Kennedy decided he would challenge Johnson for presidency. On June 5, 1968, Robert Francis Kennedy was assassinated in the kitchen of the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, California, by a Palestinian named Sirhan Sirhan. He was shot 3 times with a .22 caliber revolver. He later died at the Good Samaritan Hospital. Like John's assassination, there are many conspiracy theories about Robert's death, such as the second shooter and the girl in the polka-dotted dress.
What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another. Feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black.
Both John and Robert have changed this world for the better. Today, around 50 years later, we still grieve for their losses of 2 brothers.
The Kennedy brothers.
And what dedicate ourselves to what the Greeks wrote so many years ago, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. Let us dedicate ourselves to that.